thing to know, especially if you are a ninja waiting in the background. Just kidding. Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of the Totally Tim Show. I'm Totally Tim, I am your host, and this is Luculent Media. Today what we're going to be discussing is plumbing. Not just any plumbing, but actually potable water piping, copper piping to be exact. See you guys in a second. We're going to heat this pipe right on this fitting where it is soldered together. And then we'll remove it and wipe it off really fast. I didn't know if you guys could hear me. Nice clean pipe. Now, what we can tell from this is pretty miraculous, because what we can see is just by looking at it, it's going to be warm, so I'm not going to touch it. But we can see that there's no channels, there's no flaws in it whatsoever, and we wiped it off really well, really fast with our dry rag, so we didn't mess it up. So we can put just a real thin coat of our paste, our solder paste on it. And our other piece, I'm going to set this down here. Our other piece is going to kind of have some stuff in it. What I mean is, inside of this, you'll have little globules of your soldering paste. And the only way to get that out is to use heat, or to clean it with a specific brush or a bit that is this exact same size. Personally, because this was a good fit, now if there would have been a leak here, then I would wire brush it with my wire brush. Stick it in there and wire brush it out. Get it good and clean. Then I would put some more paste in it, and then I would resolder the unit back together. It's rare that you would ever have to replace a piece of pipe just for a leak around the fitting. So there's our piece. Here's our piece that goes in there. Now it may not go all the way down, but that's okay. Let me show you guys a quick trick. We're going to heat it up. And it should fall into place here in just a second. There we go. See how it fell right into place? Now, one thing that I didn't tell you that I'm going to tell you is don't get your fitting over 850 degrees hot. Hold it down here, kind of closest to this end. Fill it up. Turn your heat off and let it cool. Now the fitting is perfect. Now we're going to talk about, now that we've got our fitting and it's perfect, so let's say that we need to add another fitting to this, and it needs to be near the proximity of the 90. How do we do that? Let's start by, the very first thing we're going to do is we'll cut this piece so that you guys can see what it is that we're actually doing.
Cut it right down here. Crank on that.
Okay, so we got our new piece. We'll go ahead and sand that off where we're going to put our new fitting. I normally have some really good sandpaper for this, but I'm in somebody else's shop today, so I'm going to have to just deal with their stuff. And we got our little piece left, and we only need one side. So I'm just going to do one side with this sandpaper. Normally, like I said, I would use emery cloth. Okay. And about 3/4 of an inch on a 1/2 inch pipe. There we go. Now we will put our paste on, stick our fitting in, put our paste on. And as you remember, this was the fitting we already did our pasting to, so we'll stick that in there. And I'll go get another small piece, and we'll put the small piece sticking out of this just for the visual effect of it. So we're here at the fitting that we just put on, and we want to make sure that this fitting is facing the direction that we want to, first and foremost. And then the second thing that we want to make sure is the distance between these two fittings. It can be right next to it, that's fine, but we want to kind of just keep a mental note of that. And so you see this is the part that's got the little burr on it. So I just want you to be aware that this other fitting, if we get this fitting too hot, this fitting will come loose. So we don't want to get this fitting too hot. You can wrap a wet cloth around this fitting while you're doing it, or down here on the bottom. Just kind of wrap it around and put a little handy clamp on it, and that will help keep this fitting cool while you're heating this fitting. Because remember, we're going to heat back here and then solder the 3 parts when they become available heat-wise. So we'll go ahead and make sure that these are all nice and tight, nice and snug, and let's get started. Turn on our, now MAP gas is better than propane, that's for sure. I'm sure I'm going to get that in the questions, and I typically do, but like I said, this is not my shop, I'm using someone else's shop. So we're just going to go ahead and use the propane tank. We're going to heat the back of the T fitting. So you guys can see, I'll put it up like this. We're going to heat the back side of it. And as we're heating the back, we're going to try to kind of get some solder on the sides. Normally, you kind of got to keep that at the tip of the blue flame makes it the hottest. But typically this one heats up the first, as it normally does. There it goes. So we can remove the heat as we're just kind of, what I do is when I'm putting my solder in, I push it. So it's like pushing it into the fitting. And I don't care if I get a little bulb on the bottom, I'll just flick it off. And then this side, I'm just going to kind of crowd it a little bit. And this side, just going to crowd that side of the fitting. Now, if you're doing this too much, you're doing too many of these, you may have to rehydrate your fitting, because it may get really dry. So what you do is just add a little bit of your paste to it. Dry rag works really well to clean that stuff off really quick. A wet rag just makes it messy, but because you don't want to lose the heat. So dry rag keeps the heat in there, but just kind of wipes off what's not needed. And here we're going to just go right to the side of it. We're going to crowd this side of this edge of the fitting so we can make sure that we got a nice, good, smooth fit, and that we filled all the little spots. Now we have a pretty good fitting. It all looks pretty good. All looks pretty clean to me. If you're truly worried about this little dimple right there, you can heat it. Just heat the outside portion of it till it melts off, and then just wipe it off with a dry rag. Dry rag. Dry rag. Dry rag will keep your stuff clean. Now there is one one other fitting that we kind of touched on earlier. It's the one that is pre-soldered. It's a pre-soldered fitting. I'm not sure if that is going to focus, but you can tell because it's got these little edges right around here. And what these are for around these hubs is, those are the actual, that's where the solder actually is contained on the inside. Let's see if you guys can see it. I don't know if you can or not, but there is solder inside of here. So with that in mind, when we're doing this, I'm just going to kind of quick clean this edge off, and I'll put some paste on it. Because I want to show you guys how to attach one of these too. So we'll quick put some paste on this. It's still a little bit warm from when we were soldering a little bit ago. Now this one, if you want to, you can stick your piece in there, turn it, turn it, turn it, turn it, turn it, and you've cleaned it out pretty good. You can put just a little tiny, and I'm talking about just a smidgen, just a little tiny bit on there. And then we'll stick it on here. Like I said, it's still just a bit warm. There we go. So now we have this fitting on here. Now, how do we heat this fitting? Normally, you would heat from here, right? You would heat from this knuckle part from the bottom, and you would heat it until the fitting got to about 850 degrees, and you'd apply solder. But in this one, solder's already there, so we don't have to do that. And as a matter of fact, if you heat it too much on the fitting itself, all of the solder will pool in one place. So we cannot do that. The best way for this fitting is to heat the piping itself close to where the solder joint actually is. I'm going to just heat it. Now, if you want to, you can use your solder to just kind of tell you when it's getting warm, because your solder will start to stick. It'll start to melt when it's getting warm. And see there, my solder's starting to melt. There we go. So my solder melted on the top. Now the joint should be done. I never added any solder to the joint itself. What I did was I used my solder, I used my roll of solder on the top part of the joint, and I'll show you guys that. Step around. I put just a little tiny tick mark right here of the solder, as you can see, just a tick mark of the solder, so I knew that the pipe was hot enough. Once I knew the pipe was hot enough, I knew that this joint was sealed. It's automatic. And you can look inside on the rest of the joint, or the rest of your parts and pieces, and you can tell that there is no solder pooling in the bottom. See if I can get a good visual aspect of where that is. There's no pooling of any solder down in the bottom there. It's pretty clean. The unit's pretty clean. And through visual inspection, if you look really, really close on the edge, you can see that there's actually a little tiny bead of solder that went all the way around. You can add more solder to it if you want to, but you don't have to. And that joint is done. So as you can tell, we did put our other fitting, it's pre-soldered fitting, but it melts at exactly the same temperature, so 850 degrees. So, and as you saw how I did it, here's my messed up piece of plumbing artwork. It's kind of like artwork. Maybe it's a ninja stick artwork. Wah! Okay, maybe not, but you don't want to hurt anybody or anything. So it's clean. It's got a little bit of solder on the, or a little bit of paste on the backside. Clean that off really good. Make sure my joint looks good. It actually looks pretty, it looks pretty spot on. It looks exactly like it's supposed to. I'm happy with that. It doesn't come off. I can't twist it, can't manipulate it. It's on there for good. And that, my friends, is pretty much the end of how to solder basic joints. All right, everybody, hope you guys enjoyed today's show. I know I enjoyed today's show. It's not often that I get the opportunity to be able to work with copper piping anymore. But it's a good thing to know. It's a good thing to know, especially if you are a ninja waiting in the background. Just kidding. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the show. It was wonderful having you guys here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the little notifications bell on the bottom as well, just so you guys know when we are releasing a brand new video. It will be amazing, I promise, as always. Until next time, you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you on the next stream. Bye.